Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality back with you here today to go over something that's more of a sentimental thing towards me. And, I know most of the stuff that I've talked about on this channel, for those of you listening, has been political in nature. But, occasionally there is some other thing that comes up that'll hit you right in the feels, as the kids say these days. And this is one of those things for me, and it goes back to sports. And I know I have a prior video out there. It's one of the first videos on my channel. I think it actually might be the second video on my channel about why I don't watch sports anymore, though that focused mainly on the NFL and Major League Baseball. And that was mainly because they went woke, but of course that leaves out basketball and hockey. And the reasons I stopped watching those have absolutely nothing to do with any political anything at all. So I figured with seeing this particular article, I could go into what this meant to me and just, some other stuff as well about this particular subject. So I've also said it many times, I am in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, born and raised, spent almost all of my life here. So naturally, something like this is gonna hit me. So most of you know that for if you are the same age I am, I'm 45. I was born in 78. So by 2010, if you followed hockey at all and you lived in Chicago, the Blackhawks had at that time the longest Stanley Cup drought in the league at that point. And they had a lot of young talent around them. Going into, I want to say it was the year before they won it in 2010, so in the 2009 season. And my history with hockey is kind of off and on. In high school, especially my junior and senior years, I was really into hockey. I had a very good friend at that time that was big into it, and he kind of got me into it, and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And I had, obviously I knew what it was before that, and had watched games here and there, stuff like that, but I'd never really gotten into it. But this, I got into hockey at that point where I wasn't really just a Blackhawks fan. I was kind of just an NHL fan. And this friend of mine in particular was really big into like the enforcers, the fighters in the league. So that was kind of like why I'd watch a lot of the games. Is like, oh, are these two guys going to fight? Is Bob Probert going to fight Ty Domi, today? Something like that. And I remember watching, just kind of everything I possibly could with hockey. And then probably halfway through college, just no reason in particular, just other interests, I guess. Stopped really paying much attention to hockey for a while, for probably over a decade. I remember kind of coming back to it a little bit after I think it was the strike in maybe 2003 or 2004 or something like that. But then I just kind of faded once again into the background with it. And then the thing that really got me back into it wasn't even the Blackhawks getting good. It was actually the U.S. men's Olympic team in 2010. I think it was 2008, maybe even 2008, whatever year that was, where they won every game but then lost in the gold medal game to Canada by in overtime by 1 goal. That was what made me go, maybe I should start watching hockey again, because at the time they had the announcers had said like all these these players on these teams were a lot of Blackhawks players, and I was like, oh really? I'm like, okay, maybe the Blackhawks are supposed to be good. I guess I should start watching. And then that year after the NHL came back, the Blackhawks made it to the conference finals and got their butts kicked by the Red Wings. And people were saying that like they were kind of like a year ahead of schedule. People weren't expecting them to get that far in the playoffs, but it was like good things are coming. So I'm like, all right, I might as well tune in. And so really kind of from after the I think it was the Olympics that year ended, whatever year it is I'm talking about, from there through probably the year after they won their last Stanley Cup in 2015, I want to say. So it was probably in the 2016, let me think here, 2015, 2016 season, because, it starts in the winter and goes into the spring or summer, was, I watched probably 90% of their games. I mean, every year there were a handful of games that I didn't see for whatever reason. Like I even was at the point where like if they're playing out on the West Coast, the games wouldn't start till like 9:30 at night, and I would take a nap after work so that I could stay up and watch the games, and then watch the game and go right back to bed after that sort of thing. So that's how invested into the Blackhawks I was. It was kind of like watching every game. And I remember there was a good friend of mine that we would be texting each other all the time, every game, every time the Blackhawks scored or something happened. So it was a really fun time. So for, I guess, what is that, from essentially 2008, 9, 10, that area. Again, it's whenever that Olympics was. Through the year after the Blackhawks won, I watched almost all of their games, and it was just a really fun time to be a Chicago hockey fan during that period of time. So one of the key players throughout that entire thing was Jonathan Toews, who at the time I started watching was their captain, and I want to say he was actually the youngest captain of the Blackhawks ever, and might have been the youngest captain or team captain in history, or I'm sorry, not in history, but history for the team, but in the league. That's what I was looking for. He was the youngest captain, I think, in the league at that point. He was only 19, I want to say. So when I saw this article pop up on Outkick a few days ago from the time that I'm recording this, I was like, oh, wow, like, I guess they're not renewing his contract. So, like, in the last few years, I mean, it's been 5 or 6 years since I've really paid attention to hockey. I know the Blackhawks are not good again, like the, oh, no, we suck again thing. And they've sold off, or I shouldn't say sold off, but traded, like, all of the players that were, all the big pieces of the dynasty away. And Jonathan Toews being the last one. And so I saw this headline, and I was kind of like, you know what? I feel like I should speak about this and just about my history with the team and just how fun it was to be a Chicago hockey fan for the last, or I should say in the 2010s or whatever. So you can see from this article right here, again from Outkick, April 13th, says Jonathan Toews will play his final game with the Blackhawks on Thursday night. And that was Thursday, it was April 13th. So the Blackhawks played the Flyers. I know the Flyers won, but I know Jonathan Toews scored a goal in the game, so that's good. But the article here says Thursday night's Flyers-Blackhawks game was going to be the type of who cares game, because I think the Flyers sucked as well. You can get it often at the end of any regular season. However, hours before the puck drop, Blackhawks announced they would not be re-signing Captain Jonathan Toews, giving the otherwise meaningless game some weight. The team announced the decision on Twitter with a statement from GM Kyle Davidson. See, I don't even know who Kyle Davidson is. I could have told you who their GM was the entire time during the 2010s. So basically the statement just says, like, we're not renewing his contract, and thank you for playing, sort of thing. So, like, decent statement there. And so that's pretty much recaps the statement. And then it says, everyone got the sense that this was coming, but it's hard not to appreciate that this is the end of one of the NHL's great modern dynasties. The Blackhawks won 3 cups while Toews was wearing the C in 2010, 2013, and 2015. Every other member of those teams has moved on, including Patrick Kane, who, for people that don't know, was like the most popular player on the team, or second most popular to Jonathan Toews. And Patrick Kane was dealt to the Rangers earlier in the season. I do remember reading about that as well, and it kind of was like a, oh man, sort of thing. But again, this is kind of coming. So coincidentally, Toews' final game will come against the Philadelphia Flyers, the team he and the Blackhawks defeated to win their first Stanley Cup in nearly 50 years back in 2010, effectively kicking off their dynasty. Yeah, and I remember exactly where I was when they won that. My dad, who doesn't watch hockey at all, had a bunch of people over from his office, and me and one of my friends went over there. And this friend, actually, I watched the Blackhawks win their other Stanley Cups in 2013 and 2015 with this one particular friend. And I remember that they scored the goal, and I kind of jumped up like, oh my God, they did it. And everyone else was kind of like, wait, did it? And then I kind of stopped and was like, wait, what's going on? Did they not? Like, Patrick Kane is celebrating there, like they won the Stanley Cup, and nobody else is moving on the ice. And the Hawks bench comes out, and it was like, did we win? And then it turns out, yeah, we actually did win the title. So I just remember that very much. I remember where I was during the other ones as well, but that one was just the special one because that ended, a long sports drought, championship drought, I should say, not sports drought, championship drought for a Chicago sports team, which at the time, the White Sox had just ended theirs a few years beforehand. The Bulls, of course, had Michael Jordan in the 90s, so not a huge drought, and the Cubs were still a few years away from ending the longest drought in the history of humankind. So this continues. The article here says, coincidentally, Toews' final game come against I already read that, never mind. And this guy's a Flyers fan, so he says, I'm definitely still not bitter about Patrick Kane's game in Game 6. So yeah, it goes both ways. I had the good side of that, and this dude, unfortunately, had the bad side. So I say, what's next for him? It says his last few seasons have been tough for Toews, and not just because Chicago was reverted to being the grease fire it was before he and Kane arrived in mid to late aughts. That's a good comparison because it's damn accurate. Says, I'm talking about the Blackhawks, but the same thing could be said about the city as a whole. How true? Says, the Blackhawks captain dealt with illnesses and injuries over the last couple of seasons. He missed all of the 2021 season due to a battle with chronic immune response syndrome. That's awful. And yeah, I do remember reading about that and hoping that he got well and was able to play again. And certainly he was, but he's definitely not the player he was. But again, hockey players start early, and by the time a lot of them get to their mid-30s, and that's what Toews is, I think he's 35. Yeah, it actually says it right here. They're slowing down. You can still be effective, but you're not the same player that you were back in your teens and 20s. Article continues, says we'll have to see if Toews decides to hang it up, having played every game of his NHL career with the Blackhawks, or if he'll sign elsewhere. Personally, I mean, obviously I know he's going to do whatever he wants, but I'm a fan of guys that stay on that one team their entire career, because there's just something in this day and age of free agency throughout the sports, and no real loyalty to a particular franchise, of guys just kind of saying, like, this is the only uniform, or in the case of hockey, the only sweater that I want to wear. So I'd love it if he just said, I'm done, just for selfish purposes. But if he signs somewhere else and wants to keep playing and thinks he can be effective, sure, why not? Go ahead. I mean, totally up to him. So as his Toews put up 30 points in 52 games this season. That's actually a better clip than he was scoring last season when he put up 37 points in 72 games. So he's still effective, probably a decent amount. So his possession metrics are down, but then again, Chicago is so bad, I'm sure most of the team is rocking a Corsi 4 percentage. That's down from previous years. And I know Corsi is a big thing in hockey. I couldn't actually tell you what it is, but I think it might be the hockey version of like the sabermetrics in baseball, something to that effect, but whatever, I don't really know what that means. I apologize. So, of course, I don't know how Toews, who will be 35 when the 2023-24 season begins, feels. That said, I think if he wants to play, he could be an appealing free agent to certain teams. He's not really a top 6 forward for most teams anymore. However, he could be the ticket for a team looking to add depth at center. Plus, he has a wealth of playoff experience under his belt. Sure does. He's a perfect fit for a young team on the cusp of regularly making the playoffs, especially since he could probably be signed to a one-year deal at a reasonable price. And then the author says, he go to Ottawa, where he'll be united with Alex DeBrincat, who came on, I want to say, right after the dynasty ended. It was kind of like, I think, the year that I stopped watching, or the year after I stopped watching, when I was still kind of peeking in every so often, but yeah, it's just kind of an end of an era here in Chicago with, our wonderful captain. Thank you for leading the team to 3 Stanley Cups. We're never going to forget it. We're never going to forget you. The team should put you into the Team Hall of Fame. You absolutely should be there. That sweater should be retired and put up in the rafters with everybody else that's up there, alongside the Blackhawks greats, because you're certainly one of them. So from a fan, from someone who watched, 90% of the games for about 8 years straight and saw all the prime years of your career and all this, I say thank you very much for everything, and just giving us some of the best Chicago sports moments of this generation. So that's really all I wanted to say about this. Let me know how you feel in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.